Yo, Edo, Hollywood Hills here, catching my breath, chilling on the couch now, and this is where I intend to be for quite a while. It's been 2 incredible weekends, but tough weekends for myself and all the riders out there. The Impy, a 3-day event, home for 3 days, straight out to the desert, which is essentially a 5-day event with 3 racing days. Good entries, but not as good as in previous years, but nonetheless, the Botswana Desert Race, the TDR, Toyota Desert 1000, to give it its full acronym and full award, is a big banger. It is the biggest off-road event of the calendar, and if you're in line for a championship, you've got to get out there and you've got to have a good event. You don't necessarily have to win the desert, but you cannot lose in the desert. And we saw a lot of guys losing a championship by having mechanical failures or injuries coming out of last year's desert. There's not enough time left on the championship tour to try and recover all those points. So super important to have a clean desert. We talk about that a lot at the desert. You've got to finish the desert or the desert will beat you and take those valuable points away from you. So let's talk about the bikes and the quads. The quads, quite a few guys missing in action. Unfortunately, Russell Ferreira, the big guy, Johan Oosthuizen. A lot of guys not making the trip up to the desert and obviously deciding to not put all their eggs in that basket and rather concentrate on GXCC racing. One of the guys that does concentrate on GXCC racing is Captain CrossFit himself, Gideon Jacobs. Had a modest qualifying in the time trial, but he really came to life on the first day of racing. Managed to pass a lot of the side-by-sides that lined up with the quads. That's a chat that's going to happen behind closed doors because that didn't really work once again, having the quads, bikes and side-by-sides on the same track. Anyway, let's power through with that. Gideon got clear air and was starting to actually run away from the field, and it was a good field as well. Hannes Simon, Ati Simon, Henny Macau Jr., Keenan Hammond, those were the big dogs at the front there. Anyway, unfortunately, a big problem on the Raptor actually snapping the frame. So that just shows you how rough the desert is. He managed to make his way home, but a no-show for day number 2. Hannes Simon came through. He had a lot of fueling problems on his bike on day number 1, but managed to get home with a little help from his friend. Friend in this form was Ati Simon. Ati always comes good in the desert. He came good 2 weeks ago at the GXCC at Ventersdorp, and he came good on day number 1 in the desert. He walked away as the Desert Rat on day 1. He backed that up with another win on day number 2. So improving from last year's result where he's up there in the top 3s. I think he was 2nd place. He said, I'm going to go one better. And he did. It's an incredible story actually to see that Ati Simon hardly ever races. And then on the toughest event of the year, goes 2 for 2, taking both days and walks away as the king of the desert. Hannes Simon did just about enough to survive the desert. He had a rough ride, he had a lot of fueling problems, he had a crack in his fuel tank, he had to go and steal at the end of day number 1, nicely, good buds there. He actually borrowed the tank from the Raptor of the now dead machine of Gideon Jacobs. So robbed that, got it going again, and actually did enough to just get enough points to stay in with a shout of the championship points lead. That was the quads, and that was a huge story. A lot of breakages, a lot of problems. Little Keenan Hammond almost actually burned his quad to the ground. Overfilled at one of the self-fuelings out there, and one of the marshals thankfully helping him out to get the quad back. A little bit of scorch marks, but generally nothing too bad. So Keenan Hammond, who had to calm himself down coming into the desert. So that was a big story at the beginning of the year. He was just crashing and making a lot of mistakes and going a little bit wild. He had a good desert. That's going to give him a lot of points going forward in the championship. On the bike side of things, the big story from last year was Botswana's own Desert Rat, Ross Branch. Won the desert, and from that rebounded and was able to carry on that momentum to go forward and nail down his first number 1 plate in national championship off-road racing. So he came into the 2017 event as the standout favorite. He was able to actually carry all of that pressure, must have weighed heavy on his shoulders. He's got a lot of local support. The factory KTM guys are looking to him to try and dominate once again. He's been unbeaten up until the desert. Cut a long story short, he comes out of the desert unbeaten as well. So 2-time TDR, Toyota Desert 1000 champ, the Desert Rat, Ross Branch, now unbeaten in 4 rounds of the 2017 championship, and he was in a class of his own. Kenny Gilbert was able to run him relatively close. I think he lost around about a minute in the time trial to Ross. So Kenny knew he was like kind of in with a shout. On day number 1, the gaps started out as like a minute gap. Then it became a 4-minute gap. Then it became a 7-minute gap. Kenny actually reined him in to the end of day number 1. And it was around about 3 minutes 14, 3 minutes 15, the eventual gap there. Low he was up there. D'Artagnan Lobjoy had a really good day on day number 1. He managed to get 3rd place on the Peak Performance Racing Yamaha, riding out of the Blue Crew. Brett Swanepoel was in 4th place. Low Schmidt was in 5th place, and I think Lawrence Mahoney was around about 6th or 7th place, and then Kyle Flanagan as well, just behind Tristan Purdon. So the motocross kid getting a lot of extra work, and his first time up in the desert. Actually very, very, very impressive ride. Day number 2, all hell broke loose. Because in the early part of day number 2, everyone was going out there to try and find their feet. Day number 1 was just a flat out horsepower super highway. So whoever had the biggest gears and the biggest, you know what I mean, they were going to win. And it was clear that the big dogs were going to be actually running at the front. So no big surprise to see the big 450s and the 350s, 4-strokes, running all the numbers out the front there. But day number 2, unfortunately, D'Artagnan Lobjoy, coming off his 3rd place on day number 1, blew his engine, was no score. So he's going to lose a ton of points in the championship, but at least he got a good run on day number 1. Also for Low Schmidt, while he was trying to climb the ladder, Low Schmidt tucked it on what he says, a super easy, simple, stupid little crash, in his own words. Tucked it, landed on his already injured collarbone, and re-broke the collarbone that he smashed up at Lichtenberg. So unfortunately for Low Schmidt, his debut season coming into the 450 Premier class, a very, very tough run. In the OR2 category, the weekend was all about Swanee. Brett Swanepoel, absolutely untouchable, and a giant killer in the desert as well. He was running top 5s the whole way through the weekend on the Pepsi Plastics Factory Husqvarna 350, and he finally gets to say that he had a good desert. It was a really, really, really rough ride for him last time around. So good to see that. Also, Lawrence Mahoney, 2 second places. And then absolutely incredible riding coming out of our OR 3 stars. Kyle Flanagan, unbeaten on the season thus far on the proudly Bidvest Yamaha. Also, Yamaha would have been biting their fingernails. They had a lot of problems in the desert last year. They seem to have got their monkey off their back. Then it was all about Sharon Moore and Taki Botjages racing for the 2nd and 3rds. They kind of kept that battle going the whole way through the weekend. On the other age group categories, all about Insane Wayne Farmer. He was absolutely lightning fast. He's an old school rider. He got his 300 Husqvarna absolutely dialed in. Had some problems on time trial, turned the screw the other way, and managed to find a really good setup. And he is just dominating the National Off-Road Championship for the Masters category. On the senior side of things, another dominant performance coming out of Bolly van Rooyen on the Brother Leader Tread KTM. But it was the battle behind that was keeping everyone biting their fingernails. Heinke Hanekom, Bruce Viljoen, Bruce May, and Curtis Jonk literally locked together the whole way through the weekend. So very, very exciting times coming out of those guys. On the younger side of the age group category, all about Stefan van Deventer. Very, very strong rides coming out of Stefan. And the rest of the guys are starting to close him in, but he's carrying so much momentum going forward into the last quarter, really, of the season that it's going to be very, very tough to beat the kid out. Couple of 125s showing up, and of course with the new rule change we know that the 125s have to fall in line with the high school categories. So Ryan Peltzer starting to get on form. He had a really tough start to the weekend, a lot of fueling problems, intermittent problems that they're having on the machine, but his dad's working hard to try and sort that out. But he came good on day number 2 and actually got himself up onto the box. The desert, like we said, an absolutely incredible event. No catastrophic failures like we saw from Swanee last year, where he lost 2 days in the championship. Yes, D'Artagnan lost it on day number 2 with a blow up of the bike. Yes, Lowe lost it on day number 2 with a collarbone blow up. But those are easy comebacks. Everyone is able to throw away one good event. Unfortunately, Lowe Schmitz has got 2 bad events, so it's going to be tough for him to try and climb the ladder out of that. Dart, he's been relatively consistent, not great by his own high standards, but he's going to be able to throw away the final day of the desert and try and rebound from that as we go forward into round number 5 for the quads and bikes down in Harrismith. For me, that wraps up 2 just insane weeks of racing. Tons of travel, tons of mileage, not a hell of a lot of sleep, lots of coffees. As you guys that know me, you will know that I've been running around like a blue arsefly. There's no other way of saying it. I've got a nice break coming up this weekend, and pretty much straight after that, we start looking forward into the racing month of July. Racing month of July, nice throw forward, double header weekend. We start things out with the next round of the Liquorland National Enduro Championships down in PE. It's going to be a different style of track. It's going to be purely man-made as far as the obstacles go, and sand bar dragging. So expect to see some different results coming out of that. That's on the Saturday. On the Sunday, I'll be working with Mike Glover and the crew from ICE. That's Inner City Enduro, and a third time that they have run that event. So very much enduro cross style, but kind of right in the middle of the city, accessible for spectators, and it's going to be fun to work with that crew. Straight after that, we come back and it's GXCC racing time, followed by a little gap week, and then at the end of the month, we go off-road racing again. So June, July, August, September, absolutely penned the whole way through. The desert delivered once again, and it was so much fun to be up there, and so cool to get Ross his 2-time win in the desert. He must have really sweated that one, and he's the desert rat. You know, we used to call Alfie Cox the desert rat. We've got a new desert rat, and it was a long time coming, and I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying that he's got Dakar aspirations. It's not going to be happening in 2018, but going forward into 2018, Ross says he's going to be inking a deal with KTM to go off-road racing as well as rallies in the build-up to get himself ready for Dakar 2019. And with the kind of form that he's able to run in the sand in Botswana, he's definitely going to be a man to watch out for. So a big one, a big 2-week run for Hollywood Hills here. Hope you guys are enjoying what we're bringing to you. Remember, it was just 1 year ago where we actually brought you the first Hollywood Hills coming out of the 2016 running in the desert. It's been a great journey. Thanks to our sponsors who are keeping things running. And Hollywood Hills, there's more to come. There's definitely a few things bubbling in the background, flirting with the idea of going and covering a couple of our true adventure events that are happening out there. There's a huge buy-in for that market, and it's going to be very exciting to see what happens in the future. For now, we're over the halfway knuckle of the season. Stay with us as Hollywood Hills carries on rolling around the country and bringing you all the race action. Our avid supporters, we appreciate big high fives and the odd coffee down in the pits. Thanks for all your support. For now, we're going to sign off, and next week, like I say, we're going to take a mini break and get ourselves ready for in 2 weeks' time when we go down for our double header in PE. See you guys there.